3 years ago, my garden was dying. Tomatoes were failing, the soil looked lifeless, and every spring I was spending more than $200 on fertilizer, just trying to keep my plants alive. Then one afternoon, my neighbor walked over holding a strange-looking root cutting and said something I will never forget. "Plant this once, and you will never buy fertilizer again." I honestly thought he was joking, because every gardener knows plants need constant feeding, but I planted it anyway, and what happened next completely changed the way I grow food in my backyard. Because this one plant started pulling nutrients from deep underground, feeding my soil for free, and today I am going to show you exactly what this plant is, exactly how it works, and why planting it this March can transform your garden for the next 20 years. Here is the reality that most gardeners are dealing with right now. You work hard every single spring. You buy fertilizer, you buy compost, you buy amendments, you haul heavy bags from Home Depot and Walmart, and you spend $200, $300, sometimes $400 before your first seed even goes into the ground. And then by midsummer, your soil is already exhausted again, and you are back at the store buying more. That cycle never ends. The average American home gardener spends between $150 and $300 every single year just on fertilizer alone. And here is what nobody standing in that fertilizer aisle ever tells you. Your soil already has access to the nutrients it needs. They are just locked 6 feet underground beyond the reach of most garden plants. Most crops have shallow roots. They grab whatever is available in the top 12 inches of soil, and when those nutrients are gone, they are gone until you buy more and add them back manually. That is the trap most gardeners never escape. Meanwhile, the people who discovered this one plant figured something out years ago. They stopped buying fertilizer almost entirely. Their soil gets richer every single season instead of poorer. Their compost heats up faster, their tomatoes grow heavier, their entire garden runs on a completely different level. And the most shocking part is that this plant costs almost nothing to acquire. Right now in March is the perfect moment to get it established. And once it is in the ground, it will serve your garden for the next 20 to 30 years without ever asking for anything in return. And that is not an exaggeration, that is just biology. In this video, I am going to walk you through everything you need to know about this one remarkable plant. You will learn exactly what it is and why it functions like a nutrient pump for your entire garden. I will show you 5 distinct ways to use it, so nothing on your property ever goes to waste. You will get the specific variety name to look for, because there are versions of this plant that will take over your yard, and one version that stays perfectly controlled. I will walk you through exactly how to plant it this March, regardless of whether you are in Michigan or Mississippi, Georgia, or Oregon. And I will share the exact method I use to turn its leaves into a completely free liquid fertilizer that feeds every single bed on my property from spring straight through to the first frost. By the end of this video, you are going to want to order this plant today. The plant is called comfrey, and specifically the variety you want is called Bocking 14. Now, if you have never heard of it, do not worry. Most mainstream gardening channels never cover it. Most nurseries do not stock it, and that is honestly part of why so many gardeners are still stuck in that fertilizer loop I described earlier. Comfrey is a perennial herb, which means you plant it once in March, and it comes back every single year without any intervention from you. It thrives across virtually every region of the United States, from USDA Zone 3 all the way through Zone 9. Which means whether you are gardening in Vermont or in Texas, this plant will grow for you. But here is what makes it genuinely extraordinary and completely different from every other herb or vegetable in your garden. Comfrey has a taproot system that drives straight down into the earth. Reaching depths of 6 to 8 feet underground, most garden plants can only access the top 12 inches of soil. Comfrey goes 6 to 8 times deeper, and it pulls up minerals that are completely inaccessible to everything else in your beds. Potassium, calcium, nitrogen, phosphorus, magnesium, it mines all of them from deep in the subsoil and stores them right inside its leaves, and those leaves then become the most nutrient-dense free material on your entire property. The first and honestly most life-changing way to use comfrey is as a completely free liquid fertilizer. The NPK ratio of comfrey leaves is 1.8 nitrogen, 0.5 phosphorus, and 5.3 potassium. That potassium number is critical because potassium is the primary nutrient responsible for fruit development, root strength, and disease resistance in virtually every vegetable you grow. Commercial tomato fertilizers at Home Depot cost between $20 and $40 per bottle. And you go through multiple bottles every single season, Comfrey gives you that same potassium-rich nutrition for absolutely nothing. And here is exactly how to make it. Fill a 5-gallon bucket about 2/3 of the way with freshly cut comfrey leaves. Pour water over them until the leaves are fully submerged. Place a loose lid or a breathable cover on top to keep debris out. And let it sit for 3 to 4 weeks. What you end up with is a dark concentrated liquid that gardeners call comfrey tea. Dilute that liquid 10 parts water to 1 part comfrey tea and apply it directly to your tomatoes, peppers, squash, and cucumbers every 2 weeks throughout the entire growing season. The results are dramatic. Stronger stems, deeper color in the foliage, larger fruit set, and significantly better resistance to the kind of heat stress that usually wipes out entire crops in July and August. One established comfrey plant produces 4 to 5 pounds of harvestable leaves per cutting, and you can cut it 3 to 4 times every growing season, which means up to 20 pounds of nutrient material from a single plant at zero cost every year. The second application requires almost no effort and delivers remarkable results. It is called chop and drop when your comfrey leaves are ready for harvest. Instead of making tea, you simply cut them at the base and lay them flat directly on the soil around your vegetable beds as those leaves break down over the following 2 to 3 weeks. They release all of those deep soil minerals directly into the root zone of whatever is growing beside them. This suppresses weeds, retains moisture, and feeds the soil all at the same time. I put a layer of cut comfrey leaves around the base of every tomato plant after transplanting them outdoors in late April and May, and the difference in how those beds hold moisture during dry stretches is extraordinary. I water significantly less than I used to, and my plants never show the wilting stress that used to be a constant battle in the middle of summer. One established comfrey clump positioned strategically near your main vegetable beds will produce enough leaf material to cover a 20 by 20 foot growing space multiple times throughout the season. If you run a compost pile, comfrey is about to become your best friend. The high nitrogen content in fresh comfrey leaves acts as a biological accelerator for the entire decomposition process. Normally, a backyard compost pile takes 3 to 6 months to break down into usable material when you add a generous layer of comfrey leaves between your carbon material. That timeline shrinks dramatically. A survey conducted by Garden Organic found that 81% of gardeners who incorporated comfrey into their compost reported noticeably faster breakdown. And richer finished compost, the leaves introduce beneficial microorganisms, activate the microbial community already present in the pile, and raise the internal temperature, which is exactly what speeds up decomposition Add a thick handful of comfrey leaves every time you add a fresh layer of kitchen scraps or yard waste, and your finished compost will be ready weeks earlier than it would be without it. Here is something most gardeners completely overlook. Comfrey blooms in spring with clusters of small purple and blue tubular flowers that are absolutely irresistible to bumblebees, honeybees, and a wide variety of native pollinators. And why does that matter for your food production? Because tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, squash, and most fruiting vegetables depend entirely on pollination to set fruit. A garden with poor pollinator activity produces dramatically fewer vegetables, even when the soil and watering are perfectly managed. Positioning comfrey plants near your main vegetable beds essentially creates a pollinator corridor that draws beneficial insects directly into your growing area. Positioning comfrey plants near your main vegetable beds essentially creates a pollinator corridor that draws beneficial insects directly into your growing area. This is a completely passive benefit that requires zero effort from you beyond simply having this plant in the ground. The fifth way comfrey transforms a garden is through strategic companion placement, because comfrey draws up deep soil minerals and concentrates them in its leaves. The plants growing in its immediate vicinity benefit from constant mineral cycling happening right in the root zone. Tomatoes planted near established comfrey consistently outperform isolated tomato plants in home garden trials. Additionally, comfrey leaves laid around the base of tomato plants as a mulch release calcium directly into the soil as they decompose. And calcium deficiency is the primary cause of blossom end rot, which is one of the most frustrating and widespread problems American home tomato growers face every summer. Addressing that calcium issue with free comfrey mulch rather than a calcium spray from the garden center eliminates the problem at the source, rather than treating it after damage has already appeared. Now here is exactly how to establish it this March. Comfrey is most easily started from root cuttings rather than seed. You can order Bocking 14 root cuttings online from reputable suppliers for about $8 to $15 for a pack of 5 to 10 cuttings. Choose a location that receives at least 6 hours of direct sun daily, though it tolerates partial shade better than most productive plants. Dig a hole approximately 4 inches deep. Drop the root cutting in horizontally, cover it with soil, and water it in thoroughly. Within 2 to 3 weeks, you will see the first leaves pushing up through the surface. For best results in zones 5 through 7, plant in March as soon as your soil is workable, which in most of the country means anytime the ground is no longer frozen. In zones 8 through 10, you can plant even earlier in February or early March, giving the roots more time to establish before summer heat arrives. Space multiple plants at least 3 feet apart, because a mature comfrey clump spreads to roughly 2 to 3 feet in diameter, and do not place it somewhere you plan to remove it later because of those deep roots. Comfrey is essentially a permanent installation, so choose its location thoughtfully. One absolutely critical detail before you order anything: there are many varieties of comfrey in cultivation, and most of them produce viable seed, which means they spread aggressively and can become invasive in a backyard setting. Bocking 14 is a specific cultivar that is completely sterile. It spreads only through root division, and only if you intentionally divide it yourself. This is the only variety I recommend, and the only one I personally use. It gives you complete control over where it grows and stays contained exactly where you placed it. When ordering online, search specifically for Bocking 14 comfrey root cuttings and verify that is what you are receiving. Before completing your purchase, quick recap of the fertilizer method so you have everything in one place. Cut mature comfrey leaves when they reach roughly 12 to 18 inches in length. Fill a 5-gallon bucket 2/3 full with those harvested leaves. Cover completely with water. Loosely lid the bucket and set it in a shaded corner of your yard for 3 to 4 weeks. Dilute the resulting dark liquid at a 10-to-1 ratio with fresh water and apply to all fruiting vegetables every 14 days from late May through early September. That is your complete fertilizer program for the entire season at essentially zero cost. Now, I want to share what this actually looked like in my own garden, because I know some of you are still skeptical, and that is completely fair. The first summer after establishing 4 comfrey plants, I stopped purchasing commercial fertilizer entirely. I had been spending roughly $220 every year on tomato fertilizer, pepper fertilizer, and general vegetable feed. That expenditure dropped to zero, and my tomato yield increased noticeably. That first fertilizer-free summer, my plants actually outperformed every previous season I had ever recorded. My compost pile, which had been sluggish for years, started finishing in 8 to 10 weeks instead of 5 to 6 months. The blossom end rot that had damaged my tomato beds for 3 consecutive summers completely disappeared. The calcium cycling from the comfrey mulch addressed that deficiency at the root level. By the second year, I had divided my original 4 plants into 14. By simply splitting the root crowns in early spring, I now have comfrey positioned alongside every major growing bed on the property. My annual fertilizer spending over the past 2 years has been under $20 total. That covers only a small amount of supplemental amendments for newly established areas. Before comfrey, I was spending over $200 every single season. That shift represents over $400 in savings across 2 years. From an initial investment of under $15 in root cuttings, the financial case alone would justify it. But the genuine transformation in soil health, vigor, and overall harvest quality is what keeps me permanently committed to this plant. So here is your action plan for this week. Step 1. Search for Bocking 14 comfrey root cuttings online. Amazon, Etsy, and several specialty seed suppliers carry them for $8 to $15. Step 2. Choose 2 or 3 spots in your garden near your main vegetable beds or fruit trees, where you want permanent nutrient cycling stations. Step 3. Order this week because March is the exact window for establishment. The earlier those roots go into the ground this spring, the stronger your entire garden system will be by the time you need fertilizer in June. If this video opened your eyes to something you had never considered before, please hit that subscribe button right now, because every single week this spring I am covering strategies exactly like this one that most gardening channels never discuss. Next week, I am going to show you how to build a complete no-dig raised bed for under $30. That produces more food per square foot than any traditional garden bed. Drop a comment below and tell me this one thing. Have you ever heard of comfrey before today? I genuinely want to know how many of you are discovering this plant for the very first time. Happy growing!